Welcome back, everyone. As you probably guessed from the title of the video, as well as some of the footage that we rolled in the beginning, we are talking about this guy right here. This is the PARD Ocelot 640. So there's a lot in that name, but what is it? Well, it is a thermal optic. It can also work as a thermal monocular if you want to use it in that role. And actually, a lot of the reviews I've seen online, almost all of them actually have been in the monocular role. We're going to talk about it in the thermal optic role here, mostly on the channel. And basically, there are a few different SKUs of the Ocelot 640. So I will roll in here on the screen on the bottom the specific one that we have here. So some of them have variable magnification there up front. This one does not. This has digital magnification, which we will show you guys here in just a second. And I suppose before we get into those technical specs and the details, let's talk about what is here on the outside. So here we have this eyepiece which threads on to the rear of the optic. Of course, you can take it off if you don't want it. However, I personally like it. There's a couple benefits to it. Number one, if you are in a near peer type of environment, it hides the light coming back off the screen on your eye, so that way, you know, if your enemy has night vision or something like that, it makes you less easy to spot. However, I just find it gives you a little bit better consistent cheek weld, if you will. It just lets you know where the right position is for my eye. And setting that, I should also say that the lens here at the rear is also focusable, so you can twist it and move it in and out. And just like a regular scope, like a non-thermal scope, you can set it to where it is clear to your eye. Everyone's eyes are a little bit different, so what that's really doing is focusing your eye to the screen that you see in there. And then continuing up front here, basically we have a lot of things going on when you lift this little flap up here. So we have both the USB-C charging port as well as the HDMI port. And then of course we also have the micro SD card. It takes up to 128 gig micro SD card. We're using 64 throughout this video. And then up front here, you also have this little section of 1913 rail. Obviously, the possibilities of what you can mount on there really are endless, but I think the most likely thing that folks are going to mount on there is going to be an external battery pack. That said, the battery on this one is pretty impressive, and of course it's over here on this side of the optics. We'll talk about it here in just a second. And to charge it while it is actually in the optic itself, you just plug in that USB-C in there and it will charge it right on up for you. And then of course, when you want to seal everything down, you just push it down and you are good to go. Up front here, we do have a lens cap, and typically on scopes, if you guys have watched the channel here for a while, I'm not a big fan of lens caps. However, the exception to that rule is going to be night vision and thermal. You absolutely need to keep this thing closed if you're going through the brush or anything like that, because the actual lens there is what is giving you the image, just like a regular camera would be, if that makes sense. So you don't want that to be fouled up, because it actually can damage the performance of the optic itself. Moving on back, this is your focus ring here. So to actually manipulate focus, you don't twist anything up front like you do on a lot of optics. You actually twist this, and we will show you that here in just a second once we mount it up on the tripod. And then continuing on to the top of it, kind of brilliant. It only has 4 buttons. Each button does 2 different functions. So basically you have a short press that will do one thing, and then you have a long press that will do another thing. And that's it. So you go down the button here and you have your playback, you have your recording and or taking photos, and then you have your actual down and up button in between. And then back here, that is what is going to give you the display, and then you can toggle through the display. Again, I will show you that here in just a second. Moving on over to this side, we have the power button. So it has like a sleep mode. If you have it on and you're just out in the woods, for example, and you don't want your battery to be drained and you're waiting to hear something, you can just tap it once and it will go like to sleep, where there's no actual image being captured, if that makes sense, and it's not draining the battery. And then as soon as you want it, you just tap it again. It will come back on and have all the full features of the optic itself. Or if you want to turn it on and off for long periods of time, you just press it and hold it to turn it either on or off. Then over here on this side of the optic, you have a lot going on right here. So we have a laser rangefinder on there. It is actually a laser rangefinder, so a lot of thermals out there are going to have a rangefinder on it, and the way they're actually calculating it is using the actual camera to calculate the distance away. This is not that. This is a real laser rangefinder. On the books, it says it will get you a range out to 1,200 yards. I will tell you, in my personal experience, that's going to depend a lot on the object, as it normally does with laser rangefinders. However, I have been able to laze out to 850 yards with this one. So that's pretty good in terms of practical capabilities out there on the range. And then behind that, we also have our battery. This uses a very standardized battery. So That is a huge plus in my opinion. They sell spare batteries, and then if you want to, you can buy separate. I believe it's a 21700 battery. You can buy separate ones. They're commercially available. They're not expensive at all. You can pick them up over on Amazon, and you can charge a bunch of them up and put them in there if that's how you want to do it throughout the night. Again, practical battery time. One thing I will tell you is I had this thing running and recording, mind you, one day at the range when I didn't know it. I totally forgot. I left it on, and we recorded 7 hours of footage in 3-minute clips, and the battery was just fine. It was at like 30%. So the battery there is pretty impressive. That was in relatively warm temperatures. If it was a little bit colder, that battery life would obviously be a little bit shorter, but practical battery life, very good. However, if you wanted to use it, like say you were in Ukraine or something like that, you were going to be on an OP for a few days, having a few of those batteries to bring with you certainly would be good. And or like I already mentioned, you could also just use that external battery pack and plug it in via the USB-C. Either one of those are an option. So I suppose with that, let's get this thing mounted up on the tripod and let you guys see what it looks like when you're actually looking through the optic itself. All right, I think we have the image synced up here with the audio from the main camera, and hopefully you guys can see an image out there. And you guys are seeing some palm trees and some water. The sun is going down, which is going to impact the actual contrast that you guys see. Of course, if it was nighttime, you'd see better contrast. However, it's pretty good contrast given the actual lighting conditions right now for sure. Part of that, the main reason you're seeing that, I should say, is the sensor. So it has a 640 by 512 thermal imaging sensor, and of course it is 12 micron as well. The microns are going to be the distance between the actual pixels, 12 being lower than the industry standard, which is typically 17 for something in this price range, is pretty darn good. It's giving you a very crisp image, and additionally in terms of optics in this price range, which of course we'll touch on here at the end, most of them are going to be 480. You're getting 640 with that 12 microns, so very, very good. The base magnification that you guys are looking at with the main image here is 2.5x magnification. Like I mentioned earlier, you can digitally zoom with this optic between 2 to 8x. So if you want to really reach out there and see what's out at a distance, you can. However, keep in mind, it is a thermal optic. So what you're actually doing when you digitally zoom is increasing the size of the pixels that the camera is picking up. I personally like to zoom with the picture-in-picture on the top there. Of course, you can remove that picture-in-picture if you want a wider field of view. However, I do like the magnification as well as the wider field of view on the bottom. That's my personal take. That's how I like to run it. But of course, you can set it up however you want to. Earlier in the video, we mentioned that it does have a laser rangefinder. One thing I didn't mention is that it does have a ballistic calculator. So you can actually set the optic up with your data for your rifle, your ammunition, your elevation, your height over bore, all of those sorts of things, and it will calculate it in terms of holdovers. They say it will calculate wind. I will tell you, I've tried the actual wind. It's a little bit difficult in real life, but I will tell you the holdovers are dead on accurate. So that certainly is nice, especially if you're in a hunting role or something like that, and you want to be able to quickly engage targets at distance, multiple targets, let's say hogs or something like that. It's very, very helpful. The wind though, in my opinion, practically speaking, if it's greater than like 5 miles an hour, that's still gonna be on you. So there is some skill involved from the hunter. The machine can't just do everything for you. We do have several different reticles, 6 different reticles available in several colors, I believe red, yellow, green, and white. And which one you want to pick when going through the menu really is just going to depend on preference as well as to which actual color pattern that you're looking at as well. The palette does matter, and there's 6 different palettes as well. So there's a lot of options depending on, again, your preference as well as the conditions that you're actually out using the optic in. I believe in the beginning of this video I mentioned that we did record 7 hours of footage, and it did so in 3-minute increments. That is the way it comes from the factory. It will automatically restart another clip every 3 minutes. However, you can change that when you're actually setting up your SD card. Like I already mentioned, it takes SD cards up to 128 gigs, and you can also set it up so if you don't want to just have it constantly recording, you can have it set up with the shot recording. So basically, it will record at a predetermined time before or after the actual shot you take. Like you can set it up with 6 seconds, or I believe up to 15 seconds before the shot, and so it's that way rather. It's generally like always recording, but then as soon as that shot breaks, it will record to the SD card 15 seconds back and then out in front as well after the actual shot is broken. I haven't used that because we've been firing multiple shots over and over again to test it out and make sure it can handle the recoil, which it absolutely has, but that is a great option, particularly for hunters. A couple other features that I think many of you guys will like before we actually get over there and start messing with the optic itself. It does have Wi-Fi connectivity, so that way you can share the image that you guys see on your scope and you can share it to somebody else's cell phone. If you want to work in pairs, maybe a spotter and or somebody else who's just out there on the hunt with you but can't see through the optic, you can let them see what you are seeing, which certainly is nice. Additionally, it has the picture-in-picture mode that we already talked about. It has hot reticle tracing as well as a gyroscope internally, and it also has a compass internally as well that you guys should be able to see there on your screen. All right, I think we should have both images synced up here so that you guys are seeing the top here on these buttons as we work through them. And obviously, if one press, we'll start to zoom in the picture-in-picture on top as we have it right there. And we're just gonna focus on that palm tree right there just to show you guys the focus mode. So basically, that is your different focal length. And right there, you zoom out. That's another thing I like the picture-in-picture for. It lets you get as crisp as possible. And like we mentioned earlier, that zoomed in image, you could shift that down to be your full image if you want to. It's just not what I personally prefer for this types of use, but people do it that way, and it's personal preference at that point. There's nothing wrong with it either way. But as you guys can see there, we have it on black hot. And down in the lower left there of your screen, you guys can see the different compass settings there as we shift around. It's definitely very helpful there, and basically that is going to be your range estimator there as we press the buttons, and it's also giving you your holdover, as you guys can see there, depending on what you are actually range estimating with the data that we have in there. And you guys can see there, this is kind of difficult. This is shrubs and trees. It's probably the hardest thing for this thing to actually range, but hey, I guess that's why we test things here on YouTube. So like I said, I've been able to range out to 800 yards accurately, and of course you guys can see your holdover there depending on your different 0 point. And I want to shift through the different types of color palettes as well there, and you guys can get a look there at what they look like. Everyone has their different preferences. I personally tend to like either white hot like we have here or black hot. That's just me. Everyone is different, but you guys can see here how the different palettes look as we go through it. I honestly don't know why anyone likes edge, but it is an option if you want to use it. One thing the scope can't do that I wish it could do is it doesn't record while you're actually going through the menu. So you have to do that when it is not recording, but your menu button here is all the way back at the rear. That allows you to change everything like contrast, your different reticles. That allows you to do the one-shot zero. So for example, I'm just gonna have to talk you through it because unfortunately it won't record it. Basically when you're going to zero your optic, essentially you're just gonna put it right where you want it. Like let's say right there, that little cross in the trees. And basically you fire a shot, wherever your impact is, it will actually allow you to move the center of the reticle down to that impact as long as you hold on the target. And basically you press and hold to save that. And that is your zero. It really is that simple. It's fantastic. Hopefully you guys don't have a headache from watching me swing this little AR-15 pistol around on that tripod. Let's talk about what it's rated for in terms of recoil, because you guys have seen it on a couple different guns at this point. And this one, obviously, Stag Arms 5.56 AR pistol. It handled it just fine. It is rated up to 6,000 joules. We have fired it on the Bergara. B14 was the heaviest hitting rifle that we put it on. And of course, that one's in 308. But 6,000 joules is roughly equivalent to a bolt action 300 Win Mag. So in terms of what it can take in terms of recoil, should be able to handle most of the things that you guys are going to throw this on. I doubt there's a lot of guys out there that are going to put this on a 50 cal, but if you do, you'll probably actually be okay if it's like a Barrett. If it's a bolt action, maybe not, but PARD has very good customer service from what I've heard. That said, I haven't had to send it back to them, which certainly is nice. Speaking of that, my relationship with PARD, they did send this out for the review. However, they don't get to see it before anything goes up, anything like that. So I'm saying exactly what I want, but they did send it out for the review. So just full disclosure on that. And a couple other things I want to talk about with a couple of different scenes that we have recorded since we've had this one in. If you guys remember during the President Trump assassination attempt in Florida, the second one, there were a lot of news reports initially that were saying that Ryan, the gentleman who attempted to kill President Trump, was in the bushes and there was no way that a thermal drone would be able to see him. And I made a video that actually went viral on X and just disproving the theory there. That is simply not true, especially in this type of forested area, which is very similar to the golf course down there near Mar-a-Lago with palms and things like that. You absolutely can see them. And what I did is I took this footage during the day. It was about 95 degrees on that day, and you can clearly see me waving to the camera. And that was with this particular optic at, I believe, 25 yards. So a thermal drone, even during a hot day, which is what people were saying, they were saying the temperature was around 100 degrees, so it would be impossible for a thermal drone to see someone. Obviously that is not true, but that was an interesting piece of footage that I thought could help people, educate people on the capabilities of these thermals. And then one thing, like I've talked about so far throughout this video, is that we're filming this obviously probably an hour before sun goes down. So you're gonna get decent contrast out there with different items. However, at night is when things really pop. And I took some footage of my neighbors. Of course, it was not mounted on the rifle. And we took some footage of my neighbors out talking one night, so you guys can get a look at that. I believe they're at about 135 yards from the distance that we were actually filming from. And that's very similar to the light reviews I do. It's basically, if you guys watch all my light tests and reviews, I do 110 yards at an angle a little bit off to the left from this image that you guys are seeing here. But it gives you a good idea of nighttime and how people and buildings contrast. It really is very, very sharp. Of course, as you guys have seen, it's very usable during the day. And if you guys have watched the footage of Ukraine and Syria and many other wars that have been going on over the last 10 years, you'll see that thermal is often used during the day. However, at night, it really does pop. And at nighttime, I really do think that is when thermal shines. Of course, it's perfectly usable during the day, as you guys have seen. However, at night, with our human eyes, we can't see anything. But with thermals, you see perfectly well, and in fact even better than you do during the day, because of the contrast of the different items. Their heat signatures is even better at night, so definitely is a superpower. If you are the one who has it and you are either hunting an animal that doesn't have thermal imaging, which I don't think any of them do, and or if you are fighting a war where your enemy doesn't have it, it's an advantage that is virtually impossible to overcome. Especially with something like this, how easy it is to zero. You can take a couple shots, have it zeroed, and go out, start hunting. As long as you put your ballistic info in, all of those things correctly, go right out there into the field and get to work. At this point in the video, I think we're pretty much done, with one exception. One thing I want to talk about is going to be the mount. It does come with a cantilever mount, and it has a number of different positions that you can mount it in on the actual mount itself. And basically what I found is in this particular setup, I kind of want maybe an inch more. However, it is one of the, I guess, downsides or benefits, depending on how you want to look at it, of having the AR pistol. I could have moved it forward a little bit there on the rail and made it a little bit better in terms of eye relief. However, we didn't want to do that. We just left it the way it was, so that way it was consistent between different guns that we were using it on, switching it back and forth. Should also mention that you can also have multiple zeros on there, so you can have zeros for different guns programmed in there, which certainly is pretty sweet. We did that throughout the testing, and it works just fine. But the actual mount itself, very solid, and I do like the cantilever nature of it. And also, it's basically about the exact same height as your traditional scope mount. So if you are talking about height over bore for most AR pattern guns, you're going to be right at about 2.5 or 2.6 inches. Just for those of you guys who are looking to actually add the data into your gun, just throw that out there, give you guys a free tip there. But of course, if you don't know how to enter that in, it's very simple. Basically, you just take the center line of your optic and measure that over the center line of your bore and put that in for calculations. But it's very comfortable for most people who are used to firing with the AR-15 or AKs or any of the modern standard rifles out there. It's going to be very comfortable in terms of head position, so we do dig that. Last thing to talk about is going to be price point. If you look around right now, the MSRP, or the MAP price, I should say, the minimum advertised price on this guy, is going to be $2,999. However, if you guys follow me on all my different social media platforms and sign up for my email and all that stuff, you guys have seen it for less than that with my codes and all those sorts of things. So it is not inexpensive at all. $3,000 roughly is relatively expensive. However, if you compare it to most of the competitive options out there, you are getting more in just about every way. Typically, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the things that are going to be in this price point are going to be a 480 image sensor. A lot of them are going to be 17 micron instead of 12. A lot of them are going to have a slower refresh rate and have more lag when you're scanning back and forth between the images. So for what you get, I think it's very good value for the money. I like the fact that it gives you the ability to run multiple batteries and or an external pack. I like the fact it doesn't rely exclusively on internal recording like a lot of thermals do. It allows you to use that micro SD card and switch them out. If you want to have, hours and hours of footage, you certainly can do that. But I think it gives you a lot of value for the money. If you guys have experience with this, definitely let me know down below in the comments. If you have any questions or anything like that that we didn't cover, you can post those down below as well. And you can also, of course, post those questions over on my various social media pages. The best places to follow me, of course, are the non-meta ones. X is definitely the best. Truth has been very good as well, so definitely check me out over there. And if you guys like this video and you're not subscribed, the sun is going straight in my eyes right now behind the camera. If you like this and you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. We do 2 to 4 videos a week here on the channel every week, pretty much without exception. So if you're not seeing that and you are subscribed, then you're being censored by an algorithm. Let me just do that real quick. Then you are being censored by an algorithm. The easy way to get around that is to sign up for the email at the website here on your screen. This email will go out 2 different formats. It'll go out in a monthly email, once a month as the name indicates, and it'll just have all my videos since the previous month's email went out. And then it also will get you signed up for the daily deals email that goes out every day as the name indicates. And it has 8, usually maybe sometimes 10 of the best deals that we find around the internet. If the item, whatever it is, whether it's a scope, pistol, suppressor, ammunition, etc., if it's in the email on a given day, it's the cheapest I know of anywhere on the internet for that item. So that way, hopefully it saves you some money and saves you some time as well, because I have already done the price comparison for you. Lastly, we have an SMS service. You can sign up for that at the website here. It goes out at most once a day, and typically, it's either the best deal that we find around the internet on a given day or a new video that has just dropped. So that way, again, we get around the algorithm and get my content straight to you guys without any big tech censorship. And with that, that's pretty much all I have. Thank you all for watching. I truly appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing everybody in the next video.